You're listening to the Money Dad Podcast, practical financial and business conversation from a dad who knows money. I'm April Adams, and please welcome my dad, the Money Dad, Robert Adams. All right, Dad. So our episodes have been building upon each other. In the first one, we talked about recording what you spend, tracking your spending. And then last time we talked about setting up a budget so we can know we can allocate our money, essentially.
So you can see where you are.
Yeah, we see where we are. But sometimes whenever you set up a budget, it creates a real oh crap moment because you're sitting there going, I don't have enough money to cover my expenses. And I am spiraling. How do we stop this spiral?
Well, the answer is easy, but getting there is hard. If you use the old man spreadsheet, it will show you real quick where the spiral is taking place.
And that spreadsheet is on our website, themoneydadpodcast.com.
So I was sharing with someone earlier that I've had couples come over to the house. We list everything in the budget spreadsheet. We list all their income, and all throughout the spreadsheet is red or minus. And the first thing that happens, the husband will point to the wife, I told you not to be spending money on this. And she points back at him, well, I told you not to be spending money on this. Go back and listen to episode 2. You have to work together. You cannot use that to beat each other up. Be smart for once in your life and look at it that it was a tool, not a weapon, to show you where you are. You know, the first thing is admitting where you are, seeing where you are, and what you have to change if you want to be successful. In episode 2, we also talked about fighting over money and fighting over who spends what and who spends this will cause divorce. It ain't maybe if it'll cause divorce. And if you think you got problems now, wait till you go through a divorce. It will cost you a whole lot more than it's going to cost you to fix what's on that paper in red.
Yeah, when lawyers get involved, there goes all your money.
Well, they get paid regardless.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I had a guy that I used to work with in North Carolina. Him and his wife had money, and they started going through a divorce, and both of them wanted to win. And I spoke to one of them's lawyer, and he says, I've tried to get them to quit, but they decided they just wanted to keep on fighting. So I decided that all I could do was just take their money. And when it was all over with, they didn't have any money left. And they still divorced. So there's a lot of things that, like we talked about, not using the budget as a tool, as a weapon to beat each other up, but use it as a tool. And the thing that nobody wants to do, April, is nobody wants to admit that they're wrong. Nobody wants to confess their faults, but that's something that when you see that you have spiraled into debt, you have got to just make those confessions and say, you know what, I did not realize this was happening, but like I said earlier too in episode 2, you know, what's behind you doesn't matter, it's what's in front of you that counts. You know, turn the clock to 0 and start a brand new day. And let's work together, honey. I love you more than I love money. We're going to stay together. We're not going to get divorced. There's going to be some things in here that I was doing wrong. There's things you're doing wrong, but let's fix it. Let's move forward, and let's get out of this spiral.
Okay, so some things that need to die before the spiral can stop. We need to kill our pride and bury it.
Kill it and bury it deep.
Bury it deep. And then we have to maybe set aside some of our desires and our wants. Maybe those impulses.
Very much. So the first thing to do is when you look at this paper that you have written down these things and they're looking back at you, now you can see where the application part comes with what we spoke about earlier in episode 2 when it comes to wants, needs, and desires. The first thing is start with those items that may have been a desire that you were spending money on, but it was not coming out of surplus. It was coming out of your electricity money or your grocery money. So work backwards now. Take the list that you have, wipe out all the desires, and now let's see where we are. If that doesn't do it, now go wipe out all the wants, and let's see where you are. If you have wiped out desires and you have wiped out wants and you're still behind, then here is the unfortunate thing that you must do. Remember, it's your world, it's not somebody else's world. So if you get that deep, then somebody has to go get a second job. Somebody has to either get a raise enough to cover it, or if you have a lot of leftover stuff, we talked about a boat, we talked about all the accessories. And here's the thing with the boat, and I'm being serious. People want to entertain, they want to be able to have hobbies, they want to be able to do things, but sometimes at a certain point of your marriage, you can't afford to do those things. So at this point, when you're just getting started and you have all that stuff, that is something you may want to sell, not only to get rid of the payments, but also to generate cash to help offset the budget so that you will not be in the red. Now, that does not mean, April, that you can't have a boat later on. It just means that you can't have a boat right now.
Yeah,
and then,
which is why I said we don't necessarily kill all of our desires. We just have to set them aside for a while.
You have to postpone them sometime, and then, but if you get to the point that you're not down to there, then, start throwing a couple of those wants back in there, but you have to get to a place to where there is no red in the third column. It has to be black. If it's not black, you're not going to make it. I have someone else that I am helping them manage their money now. They always told me that they had enough money to pay their bills. When I put everything in my spreadsheet, there was no way they was going to make it. And they kept trying to borrow from their friends, get money from, other relatives. And it still didn't do any good because their house still went into foreclosure. And they were about to not have anywhere to live. So regardless of how your emotions are, you got to put on your big boy pants or big woman pants and decide that we're going to make this work. We're going to make the sacrifices, because if we don't, it's not going to get any better. So, you got to make the right decisions, and again, get the pride, get the arrogance, get the emotions, and then quit pointing at each other. And then how about pointing back to yourself and say, hey, these are the things I need to do, honey, to contribute to this. What is it that you need to do? Remember, getting rid of the individual attitudes and finding common ground on the attitudes that you do have, and making this thing work.
Okay, well, that can be tough stuff, and I know you're talking about married people a lot, but I do want to not neglect our single audience here, because it is a little bit of a different process. Because whenever you do have the spouse, I think overall being married makes it more complicated to pay off this stuff and to be able to get yourself in a good space. But whenever you are single, a lot of times you're doing all of this on your own. There's not another person that you can call on. There's not you're not going to have family nights or things like that either. And so when you're single, a lot of your life revolves around going out and doing things with other single people. And so that can be a big challenge whenever you're making so much, you're struggling to pay bills, but you don't want to be lonely all the time. How do we work through our social lives and account for those things whenever our ability to be in community sometimes feels like we have to spend money?
I'll answer it one way before I answer it the serious way, because you sound so serious. The Eagles used to have this song a long time ago. It was called Get Over It. You know, if you have not heard the song, go look it up, listen to it a couple times, and get over it. You know, we had talked about emotions, we talked about pride, we talked about ego, and even in episode 1, I talked a lot about when I was younger, and being that weekend drunk, I was buying drinks for everybody. I was buying breakfast for everybody. I was just, good time Robert. And everybody liked hanging out with Robert, because it was free, but Robert was the one suffering, not them. So get to a point, and I think we talked about in episode 2, where your possessions and the things that you buy and the things that you do does not define who you are. Learn to have some character in life and learn to be confident in who you are, instead of having to go, as single people would do, spend money on others, or say,
well, it's just going out.
That
it's not
you
even
may
spending
not,
it on others.
You may not can afford to go out where other people can. Don't let that turn you into a very depressed person, but just look at it as realistic. Get over it. In your situation in life, you don't have the money to go out 3 times a week, but you might can go out 1 time. So just tell them that you got other things planned and other things to do, and go do the 1 time and enjoy it. But, learn to get your pride and your ego out of the way. And just also, a lot of people don't like to say the word no.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn how to do that. So all of this is looking at where you are, and then when you do look at this on paper, it will look back at you. It will show you exactly where you are, and then you just have to have the willpower and the desire to have a better life for yourself and make those choices in life that aren't too easy at a certain time of your life.
Mm-hmm. I think you said a word. I think it was the last time you mentioned contentment. Did you mention contentment?
Yes, I did.
And to that point, I think too, if we're feeling this pressure to be something, to do certain things, whether it's with our friends or with our family, to be able to work our relationships to where they're not revolving around those things. Like, the kids don't have to go to Disney World right now. Or you may be able to suggest to your friends, let's go do something that's more cost effective. I have had friends at some point that finally do lay down the pride. They're like, I don't have the money to do this. So if you want to hang out with me, we're going to go do this other thing.
Those are the people that are confident in their life. And those are the people that money does not define who they are. They live within their own tunnel vision. And they are doing it, but I tell you what they have that others may not have, and that is called peace. Mm-hmm. They have peace of mind. You can't buy peace of mind. You mentioned things about Disney World and so forth. It is very hard for children to come home from school and say, Mama, Daddy, so-and-so's going to Disney World on vacation. Are we going to be able to go too? That's the last thing you want to do, is look at your kid and say, no, honey, we can't go to Disney World. But in the process of going through getting out of spiraling debt and even teaching, look at it as a teachable moment. to be able to start preparing your children how to look at money, how to educate them about money, so that they don't get into situations when they get older. Just be honest. Say, unfortunately, April, we can't go to Disney World this year because right now we're trying to get through some other situations. But we are sure hoping that we can go later on. But we will not be able to go this year.
I think that's a better approach than just saying to your kid, we can't afford it, because that can work in their minds this more of an obsession with money of I have to get to this place, but more like we are working to get to this spot as a family.
April, that is more than a great point. That's a great point. Too many times people just get frustrated, parents get frustrated, throw up their hands and say, we just don't have the money. We just don't have the money. Don't tell your kids that all the time. You know, be honest with them, but don't use that phrase, we don't have the money, because then they're going to become obsessed with money. I got to have money to be able to do these things. Then they're going to start looking that going to Disney and doing all these other things make them important, not their character. So use these times, even though they may be a little tough, use them as teachable moments, because that's why you have kids in the first place, is to try to teach them how to live this life that is ahead of them.
Yeah, and I think there's something to teaching your child how to earn money, maybe with a little allowance for doing some work around the house, or however you want to set that up, or if they're in a situation where they can get a little job with somebody, maybe doing some yard work or something, maybe there's neighbors or friends, because I've had friends that have said, oh, my child is trying to raise money for this, if anybody needs their lawn mowed or something like that, my kid's up for hire, pretty much. And there's something to that, to earning your money and having a goal. And I can remember at one point I wanted a set of rollerblades, and I had the plan to buy the rollerblades myself, and I kept a notebook, and when I would make money, and I would look at what the rollerblades cost, and as I would make money, I remember making notes of where I was to get in my rollerblades.
Well, and that's what we are supposed to try to teach our kids, is to teach them this early. And here's one thing for parents. Let's branch off a little bit and say, hey, I want to do some things to teach my children from getting into spiraling debt. Teach them how to do the things that we're talking about. They're not stupid. 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, start teaching them. That's one of the things that, I've spoken to a principal in a county that I live in about maybe coming to his school once I retire and start teaching kids how to prepare budgets and how to look at money, so they can maybe cut some of these things off before they get in this situation. Yeah. You trigger some things I do want to talk about that when I've had families come over. If your child plays sports, every one of you think your child is going to be a professional, especially in the softball, baseball field. They're going to make it to the pros. And it's been pumped in your head that they are so good that we want them to be on this traveling team. And what happens is, I can tell you from experience, when I was younger, I only played high school ball. There was a scout with a professional team that came and spoke to me. He did not speak to me because I played traveling ball. He spoke to me because he heard about me playing high school ball. If your child is really that good, they don't have to play traveling ball to be able to go to the next level. Your kid either has it or doesn't have it. Now, if you have an excess of surplus if you have surplus in your budget and you want to use that as an entertainment, go for it. But there was a lady I worked with who was so dedicated to her daughter. They traveled all the time on traveling softball. She was good. She graduated from high school. She had a scholarship because she was good, not to a big school, but to a college in Florence called Francis Marion. She went and played 1 year of softball and said, "I don't like it anymore." The lady told me that she actually did chart all the money they were spending on traveling softball. She could have sent her kid to college free
Oh my
if they
goodness.
just had not traveled in softball. So that goes back to ego and all of those things.
Yeah, I remember it because I did it for maybe a year or two, and we stopped because of the Sunday thing. And
Yep.
Mama said, "You're going to be in church on Sunday," so that ended my travel career.
Absolutely. But what it did not end, if you were really good enough, you would have gotten a scholarship, to go to college.
And one of the difficult truths is, well, one, only a small percentage do go pro, but if you are female, and this is tough because as a woman it's tough to hear, but there are not many professional sports opportunities for you, and even had I gone to college and played, that would have been it. And so when I look back to, at the time, I was disgruntled about not being able to play as much ball as I wanted to. But now as an adult, being able to look back, sometimes I'm like, I wish I would have used that time for something else. So it can be tough in the moment to hear and assess and really look at things through the view of reality. But when we can, it helps us in the future.
Parenting is very tough. It is hard to discipline your child, but a lot of times your child needs disciplining. They do not need, "Don't do this again or else," or "If you continue doing this or else." There's never an or else, because the parents don't have the guts to do the right thing and make the hard choices, and it goes right back to the debt spiral. You've got to be tough, and you've got to be able to make the right choices, because just in disciplining your children and making them better, the discipline and the budget helps make the family better. Here's another little trap. So I now have a granddaughter, and even whenever you guys were growing up, everybody got invited to birthday parties. So what did the parents coming to the birthday party want to do? I have to bring a nice gift, or I'm going to look stupid to everyone else. Don't get caught in that trap. You brought the gift that you could afford, and you be proud of what you did. And you're bringing the gift also to give to the child that's having the birthday, not to impress all the other parents that are there, sharing in the birthday party. So you can kind of see where episode 2, where I talk about, getting the attitude right, get pride, arrogance, all those things out of the way. That is what causes this debt spiral. And then all of a sudden, well, I can't give up softball. That's going to break my kid's heart. Or I can't give up this, or I can't give up that. That's going to break their heart. Well, sometimes their heart has to be broken. If not, their heart's going to be broken when you living apart and you swapping out on the weekend to share your children.
Or when they don't have food to eat.
Oh, yeah. I mean, number one, my father grew up during the Depression, and he always had food on the table. But this is a funny story too, April. But my dad always said, "Hey, I'm doing the best I can. You will have something to eat. It may not be what you want to eat." So I'll never forget, when I was 14 years old, I got moved up to the varsity in football to play a football game, and it was an away game. And on the way back, the team always, all the way back from the game, the team always stopped by a restaurant and got something to eat. So back then there was a chain of restaurants called the Hungry Bull. Well, I'd never been to a steakhouse before, and I was 14 years old. So I didn't know what to order, so one of the coaches come over there and said, "Hey, son, order this." So it was a sirloin steak and a baked potato, and a salad. And I thought the salad and baked potato was good, but I was taking my fork and I was trying to cut that steak with my fork. And he looked at me and said, "Son, what are you doing?" I said, "Man, this thing's tough, Coach. I can't get this thing to cut." He said, "That's what the knife's for." Do you know why I didn't know what to do, April? Because
you only had hamburger steak.
Hamburger steak, and then we also had country fried steak. So when my mama told me to go to the little local grocery store, tell Mr. Jones to run it through the cuber 4 times, so she would fry country fried steak. So I thought that was steak because we used our fork to cut it with. So I grew up okay. I'm not scarred. I'm not depressed. Sometimes you just have to be real with your kids. And he always gave us food to eat, and we never had name brand stuff, but we did not starve. Mm-hmm. And when we would say something about other things, about, "Well, Dad, why can't we do it? Why can't we, go on a week vacation?" We never went on a week's vacation. We'd leave on a Sunday. We'd come back on Tuesday night because he worked Wednesday through Saturday. And he says, "Well, we're going to go have a good time for these couple days, and we're going to make the best out of those 2 days more than other people make out of 7. Mm-hmm. And that was his answer. And it was always good enough for me.
Yeah, and so I think to those points, whether you have a family or you're single, the other thing that having a budget and dropping your ego at the door does is it also helps sort out the people in your life. Because if there are people in your life who only want to be with you for what you can provide, or for your ability to be able to go out when they want you to go out, if that's what they want, those are the people to actually cut out of your life, because they don't care about you. They just care about what you can do or your ability to go have fun or whatever. So so whether you're married or single or anything, those are the things that can help parse it out, and then you can start finding the people in your life who are already content the way you want to be content. And so it becomes more about how you spend time together and those types of things instead of just what you can do.
That is correct. And that's the thing we talked about earlier too, is do not let possessions define who you are. Your character needs to define who you are. I can remember I was born in 1957, but I bought my first new car in 1986. Until that point, I always had used cars, but guess what? I always got to where I needed to go. I always got there on time, and it did not drain me and cause me to go spiraling into debt because I needed a new car. So if you focus on life and who you are instead of on money and what you think money can do, remember, it does not buy peace, and possessions are nothing but false securities. There was a very wealthy NFL person, I will not call his name, but they were interviewing him, who had a beautiful wife, who had all these accolades, who had all this money, and he looked at the person interviewing him and said, "But there's got to be more than this." And that's my point for talking about those other things in episode 2. There is more than this. It is called peace of mind. It is called contentment. And money and possessions, and that's why I use that term, false securities. It is nothing but a false security. It will not buy you happiness. And things like that, because you're trying to compete with someone. That's why I always use that term tunnel vision, is live in your world and make your world a happy world. And whatever other people do, be happy for them. I remember, there was times I was younger when I grew up on the Mill Hill, and we didn't, I'd drive to school in 1975, and here come these guys in these 75 Trans Ams, and I'm looking at them, and I'm in my 68 Ford Devil Chevrolet, and I'm like, man, why can't I have one of those cars? But very quickly, I realized, man, I'm so glad I ain't walking like Clifton over there. You know, I sure appreciate my 68 Chevrolet because I'm not walking. And, you know, just learn to adapt to my situation. But today, you know, because of focusing on the things that need to be done, getting rid of pride and ego, having a budget, living by that budget, then we were able to create surplus. If I wanted to go buy a new car today, I could. But why do I want to buy it just to buy it?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so without divulging too much, I mean, the things that we worked hard through when we were younger, and when you and Michael were younger, it might have been a little tough at times. But right now, things are great. If we had not done those things would not be great.
Yeah, so to kind of recap on this, because we've talked a lot about the emotion of it all, so that really is like the first place to get those feelings and emotions under control, dropping the pride. But then as we're looking at our budget and cutting out things, maybe we can think of some alternatives. So I know streaming services are a big thing. And so instead of streaming, you might need to cut some of those and maybe watch some DVDs. Or there's also stuff that you can check out from libraries. Remember libraries, you borrow it for free and return it. And in our food budgets, there are little adjustments that we can make. Yeah, so you might not have the nicest food, but you can also make that food really good. And I'm going to do a little shameless plug for a website that I run called Homesteading in the City. So hitc.city is the address to go to if you want the shortcut. We'll link it on our website, themoneydadpodcast.com, because we have some recipes that are budget friendly that will give you delicious meals without having to break the bank. So those are little things that you can do as you start to chip away at your budget to save more money. It might look small in the beginning, but it adds up over time.
I'm going to make this one comment. For talking about that, it goes back to needs and wants. To get started, you must cut out your wants if you are in the red. But here's one thing as a child. My father was 42 when I was born, so I was raised sort of like my grandparents. So your papa, as you called him, he grew up during the Depression. Here's one thing about children that parents need to realize. If your children's never had it, they'll never miss it. There were things I never had, so I never missed. So the things that I did have, though, is I had a roof over my head. Even though 6 people lived in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, I still had a place to go use the toilet. I just might have had to wait a little bit longer. I still could take a bath, and I had food to eat. And my father, as you mentioned earlier about cutting grass, I knew how to cut grass at 10 years old. So I used to pull a lawnmower behind my bicycle and go make $2 to $3 by cutting people's grass, and that's what I had spending money for. So some people may say, well, that was just awful. No, it wasn't awful, because I was being taught how to do things, how to take money. I can remember they had these old passbook savings accounts where it was a passbook, a book you open up, you take to the bank, you make a deposit, they would stamp it and give it back to you. And he says, son, start taking $5 a week, whatever you do, and put $5 in that passbook savings account. And I didn't even have a license. He would drive me down there so we could go through the drive-through and do that. It was amazing when I had that $250 at the end of the year, you know, and it was like, wow, I've never had this much money in my life. But it wasn't $250 he taught me about, it was $5 he taught me about.
Yeah.
So that's really what the budgeting and changing things are, is all the $5 you can save, you'll end up having the $250s in life.
Well, and I think that's going to lead into our next episode very well. So next time we will be talking about how to start your savings to have those emergency savings and beyond. Thanks for listening to the Money Dad Podcast. Head on over to our website, themoneydadpodcast.com, for more resources and to send in any questions that you might have. Do your homework, and we'll see you next time.